To debut and premiere a brand new show here with Jerry Hootie Ratcliffe. The man is in the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame. Hootie, technically the show has not started. The mics are on now. Just give the folks a little tease of why you're excited for this program.
I just think it's a really innovative project, and obviously you've had a lot of success, and I'm dabbing into the business world, having gone out on my own 5 years ago, starting my own company with JerryRatcliffe.com, and I'm still trying to spread the word. I still run into people, Jerry, that think I'm retired. They don't know that when I left the newspaper that I continued on with my business or started a new business. So it's always good to reach out and try to touch those people that think that I'm in a rocking chair somewhere.
The man is crushing it. He's doing great things at JerryRatcliffe.com. I read his website all the time. UVA and ACC sports fans, I think you are undoubtedly going to love this program. It's such a fantastic time for us to launch this show from a content creation standpoint, because the college sports landscape is about to dramatically change even more. Conference realignment is turned into almost, at least in my household, a four-letter word.
Yeah.
I am not a fan of conference realignment. I understand change is inevitable, but aggregating power in the hands of a few is not good, for my opinion, for sports in general, because what makes sports great is parity. And the fact that on any given Saturday or any given Sunday, we don't know what could happen. And when we start consolidating power, and Judah's going to start the program here in a moment, we're just giving you a tease of what this is about. When you start consolidating power in the hands of a few programs, especially the money that comes with it, that's not going to create any parity for college football.
No, it's a case of the rich getting richer, and the others are left out in the cold. They've had their candle blown out, so to speak. And, I think it's all driven initially by the Fox ESPN war for control of TV rights, and it's gotten out of control. The greed has gone overboard, and it's in my mind it has wrecked college athletics, and I'm not nearly as excited about college athletics, particularly college football. And I'm a huge college football fan. You won't find a bigger college football fan than me, and I'm just so disappointed in how things have gone. It's sickening, really. I'm just disgusted with the whole thing.
We'll talk about this. We'll talk NIL. We'll talk UVA basketball. We'll talk what to expect from the Who's. A lot to cover on today's program. Holly Foster and Henrico, hello. Jesse Rutherford, Nelson County Board of Supervisor, hello. Bill McChesney, Johnny Ornalis, Bellamy Brown, who ran for Virginia delegate, Roger Voisinay, the fantastic realtor watching the program, Woody Fincham in Lake Monticello, Jason Howard on Rio Road, Cindy Shorberg, one of the co-owners of Keswick Vineyards, hello. Juan Sarmiento, hello. Laura Fonner, the chef, hello. Scott Aaronworth in Virginia Beach, the attorney. Logan Wells Claylow, hello. Jen Finazzo, Patty Zeller, Jamie Waller, Thomas Leroy, Herb Porter, Jeff Camrath, former Virginia baseball player, hello, and welcome to the program. Michael Blevins, the restaurateur, Andre Xavier, hello. Guys, give the show a like and a share anywhere you are watching. J-Dubs, we can rock and roll here when you are ready. Bear with us with the first iteration of the Jerry and Jerry Show. With the first iteration, I think you guys are about to see the foundation of what our vision is for this program. If you would do us the favor of sharing the show, that would mean the absolute world to us. J-Dubs, we are in your hands, and we can rock and roll when you are ready, sir. Good Tuesday morning, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to the Jerry and Jerry Show. Thank you kindly for joining us. We are live in downtown Charlottesville, Virginia, the home of the University of Virginia. Our audience, though, anyone who is a college sports fan, and today's program is absolutely loaded. If you love sports, there's no better show than a show co-hosted by Jerry Hootie Ratcliffe, the man who created a website that we visit every day, jerryratcliffe.com, and an institution and an icon that was inducted earlier to the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame. So many storylines to cover. I encourage you guys to look at the screen here in a matter of moments as we highlight headlines on screen. Judah Wickhauer, our director, why don't we go to the two-shot and welcome Hootie Ratcliffe, Jerry Ratcliffe, guys. The best boss I have ever had, and a man that needs absolutely no introduction in the Atlantic Coast Conference beat. Hootie, my friend, good Tuesday morning to you.
Thank you, Jerry, and I'm excited and thrilled to reunite with you after all these years. I've admired what you've done and how you've succeeded from afar, and it's great to be partnering up with you again.
It's truly my pleasure. The gentleman on set has an award that is so heavy. When he was putting it on set, it may have taken two of us to get it on the table over here.
It's pretty heavy.
This man is a Virginia Sports Hall of Famer. Judah, why don't we get a close-in one shot on Hootie's award? What does it mean to be in the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame, Jerry Ratcliffe?
Wow, it was the thrill of a lifetime, Jerry. It makes you feel like that. All the work that you put in over the years, and all the late nights and endless driving and into the night, coming back from 9 o'clock ball games on the road, all the deadline pressure, all that stuff that was really worth it. That you've made an impact somewhere along the way, and hopefully entertained people, touched their lives, made them think, made them laugh, made them cry, made them cuss, and so. It was just the culmination of a lifetime career. That's all I've done in my life, and it was just an incredible weekend. Will Driscoll, the new executive director of the Virginia State Hall of Fame down in Virginia Beach, has done a marvelous job in pushing that organization forward, and I think the best is yet to come. He wants to spread it all over the state. It's been centric mostly to the Tidewater area for years. The former home was in Portsmouth. It doesn't really have a current home, and so he's trying to make the whole state of Virginia its home and honor people from all over the state. And I'm so proud to be a representative of Charlottesville in the hall. And it was great. It was the 50th class of the Hall of Fame, and They made it a special weekend. They rolled out the red carpet, treated you like royalty. We had several hundred people there for the breakfast, and then several hundred more there for the induction ceremony that night. And I was so proud to go in with a couple of people that I've covered in my career. Sean Moore, arguably the best quarterback in Virginia history, and Ryan Zimmerman, the face of the Washington Nationals for so long, and
World Series winner.
Winner, and I mean, I think he'll probably be in the Hall of Fame someday, Baseball Hall of Fame. And William & Mary coach Jimmy Laycock. It was really cool to go in with him. I've always had a lot of admiration for his career. What he did at William & Mary was unbelievable. So to go in with that class, along with a few other people, was just a dream come true.
Absolutely amazing. Sean Moore, Ryan Zimmerman, Jimmy Laycock, Jerry Hootie Ratcliffe, the 50th year of the inductee into the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame. He's got an award next to him that is like Waterford crystal heavy. It's so big time over there. It just speaks to his pedigree and his reputation covering the Atlantic Coast Conference, covering college sports. Hell, he covered pro sports for a number of times. The irony of us hooking up here is when I was a student at the University of Virginia, 21 years ago, I walked into his newsroom at the Daily Progress, and I pretty much begged him for a part-time job in his sports section. And undoubtedly, the best boss I have ever had, this man, Jerry Ratcliffe. You guys see headlines on screen. They will rotate as a one-shot gets on screen. You'll see what we're talking about. Hootie, we got folks in 4 different states watching us right now. Earlysville's in the house. Crozet's in the house. Richmond, Virginia is in the house. Alexandria, McLean, Short Pump, Philadelphia, Nashville, Buckhead, Georgia. I'm now seeing Nags Head, so that's 4 states in the house. What do you want to do with the show? What are some of the plans that you kind of had in mind for the Jerry and Jerry show?
Well, I think the concept we've come up with, sort of a PTI format, is a nice way to approach things, just covering various topics that are on the minds of Virginia sports fans, ACC sports fans, and obviously we can go into more than that, into college athletics or whatever. But I think it's to give people another option. You see so many other news organizations these days cutting back, cutting their budgets, cutting their airtime, cutting their space, cutting their coverage.
New York Times just cut its sports department.
Yes, I think the LA Times did as well, and I think that's a trend that's going to continue, really, which is a sad commentary on the way we get our news these days. But we've seen it all across America. It's hard to find sports columnists anymore, because that's usually the first thing that goes in sports departments. And I think that's the most interesting thing in a sports section myself, is a sports columnist.
Me too.
And that was always the first thing I read when I would go to another city, just to see what is being talked about, and getting those opinions from people who really know what's going on, because they talk to the right people. One thing a lot of readers and listeners probably don't know about our business, Jerry, and I'm sure you found this out in your time working in the newspaper business, is we talk to sources all the time. And just because we find out things, we can't report them sometimes. There's conditional things. You can use this off the record. You can't use my name, but you can use me as a source close to the program or whatever. A lot of times we know 10 times more than what we're able to write, but we use it as background information and store that knowledge for future use. But I think that's one thing that I think has made a lot of people successful in this business, is that they protect their sources. And I know sometimes we get attacked because, it's an unnamed source, but they really are unnamed sources, because they can't afford to give up their name, because a lot of them would lose their job or position or come under incredible scrutiny if their names became public. So we try to take you behind the scenes and give you knowledge that perhaps you wouldn't get otherwise.
Viewers and listeners watching the program now in 6 different states, Hootie, you have an opportunity to shape the discussion by leaving your comments on whatever social media platform you're watching upon. Just drop them in the feed. We aggregate all those comments in one place with our software, and we can relay it live on air. For example, John Blair in Stanton is saying, Jerry Ratcliffe is an institution. This is such a great show. You have this comment coming in from Grayson in North Downtown. Jerry, I've been looking forward to the Jerry and Jerry show since you mentioned it last July. Wahoo, wah, everyone. Mark Glickman, friend of yours, friend of mine, is watching the program. Great guy. Says, buenos dias, amigos. Looking forward to this collaboration. Johnny Ornalis, who's the owner of El Mariachi, the restaurant at Zion's Crossroads, and Guadalajara on Jefferson Park Avenue. He's giving everybody props as well. And he says we should do a marching band intro for this program. We're not opposed to that. We're open to all ideas here on the Jerry and Jerry Show. Now look at the screen. Here is your first headline. And Hootie Ratcliffe, it is what to expect with college sports conference realignment. everyone who follows college sports in some capacity is seeing the Big Ten trying to get market share, the Big 12 trying to get market share, the SEC trying to get market share. And frankly speaking, a lot of us that are ACC fans, Pac-12 fans, are very, very nervous that the future of our respective conferences is not so bright. Open-ended question first. What do we expect with college sports realignment?
Well, I think a lot of people in the ACC are nervous because nobody expected the Pac-12 to just totally collapse last week. It was so sudden. They were within hours, Jerry, of coming up with a deal to a TV rights deal that would have made them solid for years to come. But everybody panicked. Arizona State, Utah were looking to jump in the Big 12, who I think was pushing them to come in. And when that happened, I think Oregon and Washington hit the panic button and begged the Big Ten to take them in, along with Southern Cal and UCLA, which announced that a year ago. I think everybody is somewhat unstable and unsure of the future. And even though the ACC has what appears to be a locked-up, unbreakable grant of rights package, there's still some panic in the conference, because all it would take is, I think, for one school to leave, and it would make other people explore that situation. And Florida State has been yakking big time.
I think the word from the North Carolina athletic director? Barking. Florida
yes.
State, right?
Barking was a good word.
Yeah.
About how they're unhappy, how they would like to go somewhere and close that financial gap that the SEC and Big Ten has over the ACC, which is going to grow with the next TV packages coming out. As we speak, Jerry, I think the ACC presidents and ADs are discussing the possibility of bringing Stanford and California into the ACC. I know that's something that they have explored heavily over the past several months, and they were actually going to meet and vote on that last Friday, but had to call off the vote because that's when the Pac-10 just crumbled before our eyes. And so I think, a lot of people say, well, it would be absurd to bring in those two schools, because what do they bring to the table? It's going to be added expense, incredible hours in airplanes if you send teams out there, vice versa. And do they financially add anything to the ACC? Well, there's some argument about that. It's not just a closed door like some people think it is. Yes, Cal has not been very successful in football lately, nor Stanford in the last year or two. And obviously football is the engine that drives the train, and that's something that has driven a lot of the expansion is football, not really basketball or any other sport. So in that respect, Cal and Stanford don't bring a lot to the table. But what they do bring to the table is they give you added inventory, late night inventory for games, which could add to the ESPN package and lead to a more lucrative TV deal down the road when they decide to renegotiate. They would have to tear up the current contract with ESPN, I think, if they add those teams. I don't know if they would add Washington State and Oregon State or not, because even though those two programs have been a little bit more successful in football, nobody seems to want them for some reason. So the ACC is discussing those possibilities today. The other factors that if you bring Cal and Stanford into the conference, obviously they're great academic institutions, which aligns greatly with the ACC's intentions and what the ACC is all about. It also opens a door to Las Vegas, Jerry, which a lot of people haven't thought much about, because Pac-12, now Pac-4, has a good relationship with Las Vegas. They have their conference championship football game there. They have some various basketball tournaments there. Las Vegas could become a very, very strong partner with the ACC, and Pac-4 could grow by bringing in some other teams from the Mountain West or other schools. That would be an incredible opportunity, I think. It would shorten trips, for one thing. You could have some neutral site games there. You have the brand new football stadium that the Raiders play in that you could play some football games in. They have various venues for basketball. Las Vegas is an incredibly growing sports town, and people love to go there. Fans from both coasts love to go there. And one thing that nobody has brought up, and I had in my column today, there's a strong possibility that MGM or some other mega casino-type business could become a major sponsor of such a partnership with the Pac-12 and Pac-4 and ACC. And we're talking about gazillions of dollars, Jerry, and that's something that the other conferences don't have privy to. So that could really enhance the package should the ACC bring those schools in. And I think that's one reason that the ACC is talking about that right as we speak. I think that there's some lucrative packages there that nobody else has thought of that could go a long way into preserving the ACC for a long, long time, keep people like Florida State from barking so much. And I don't think Clemson is really a school that really wants to leave the ACC.
Why would Clemson want to leave? In football, they'll be top dog every year.
Yeah, I mean, if you jump in the SEC, be careful what you wish for.
Exactly.
Because you just become another average program in that conference. You don't dominate the league like they have the ACC. So I think Florida State may find that out too. They haven't really had much to bark about for several years since Jimbo Fisher ran the program into the ground and left. They did have a decent season last year, but we'll see if they can sustain it.
You're getting props from a lot of viewers and listeners. For example, Daniel Smith writes on Facebook, "Congratulations on the Hall of Fame, Hootie." He's commenting from Texas. 7 states watching the Jerry and Jerry show right now. Viewers and listeners, you can leave your comments on any social media platform you're watching upon. We'll relay those comments live on air. If you have a question for either one of us, put them in the feed. We will also mention them on air. Ray Cadell loves you. Ray Cadell is giving you some props right now.
The big cat.
Yeah, Ray Cadell is a fantastic realtor and a fantastic front man for many different bands. One of the best horn players on the Eastern Seaboard, Ray Cadell, watching the program. Bill McChesney is giving you some props. We've dubbed him the mayor of McIntyre. He's watching the program live right now. All right, so questions will come in. We'll get to this question here, and this one is from Wheeling, West Virginia, from Steven, saying the ACC boys seems to have these schools locked up with a contract that was renegotiated in 2016. You mentioned that Florida State is barking about leaving the conference, but frankly speaking, the buyout is way too large for them to break this contract. Please ask Hootie about this topic.
Well, I think the exit fee and the grant of rights would end up costing them maybe $300 million. That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. And was it the head of the Board of Visitors, and correct me if I'm wrong here, a heavy hitter with Florida State,
yes,
made a comment on record in the last 3 or 4 days saying this exit clause is not going to keep us from leaving the ACC. Was that smoke and mirrors? Was that a bluff?
I don't think so.
Really? Wow.
I think that some of their people are just really discontented with the fact that the SEC schools are making and the Big Ten schools are making so much more money. There's a huge chasm there that's going to get wider and deeper once all these contracts expire and they renegotiate. Some Florida State people think that even though they might lose $300 million in the deal, that they could make $600 million down the road. So I think that's the one thing that the reader just asked about that is driving Florida State's desire to explore another avenue. Again, we're talking about a lot of money. But if you feel like you're going to lose $300 million but gain $600 million, it doesn't look quite so bad. It may take time for that to happen, but we're talking, we're not talking about a year or two. We're talking about 10, 20 years down the road. What's college athletics going to look like? What are these programs going to look like? And Florida State, in some circles, feels like it's worth the gamble. Personally, I don't think it's a very smart move, but I'm not part of the Florida State nation, Seminole nation, so I don't know what they're thinking.
I agree 1,000%. I mean, Florida State is not the Florida State of Charlie Ward and Warwick Dunn or Peter
Bobby
Warwick
Bowden, yeah.
or Bobby Bowden. I mean, this is a team that in the Atlantic Coast Conference, as you highlighted, since Jimbo Fisher pieced out, has been slightly above average. And certainly in the shadows of Clemson. I mean, what is Florida State thinking trying to jump into the Southeastern Conference where they would be even lower on the influence or the power totem pole? I mean, the SEC is as deep a conference when it comes to football as you get. Katie Pearl's got a comment. This is a great one. KTP, we love when you watch our shows. She says, fellas, I think with conference realignment, I would love to see more discussion about how these decisions will impact the student athletes and smaller sports. Thinking through the logistics of having to fly commercial across the country overnight and then having to be at a morning class the next day. And then she says, and go Noles from a double Seminole watching the program right now. So multiple degrees here from KTP from Florida State.
Right.
She wants us to talk maybe the non-revenue or the Olympic sports that don't have the amenities when it comes to travel when going potentially across the country or lengthening the travel pattern.
Well, that's something that has to be addressed, and that's something that I think has been overlooked by all this expansion. It's already enforced because Southern Cal and UCLA and now Oregon and Washington are going to have trips to College Park, Maryland, to Rutgers in New Jersey, and vice versa. It's going to put a strain on the student athlete. One thing that some people have overlooked is a lot of these athletes, and they're already doing it because Virginia, for example, and some of the non-revenue sports, Olympic sports, are having to travel not only to Miami and places like that, but they play non-conference games across the coast. And one thing that a lot of people aren't aware of is a lot of these athletes, they're missing class time because of the travel, but they can do their classwork online now. They can do it on their laptops or their tablets or whatever. They don't always have to be in class the next morning, I don't think. And I may be totally wrong on that part of it. Some of them may have. I know some of them do come back from a late night, get back into Charlottesville at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and will be at a class the next day. But I think the fact that they can do a lot of their work online helps ease some of that. If you do accept Cal and Stanford into the conference and you have to go out there, you could arrange it to where you can go out there for an extended stay and play Cal on a weekday or a weeknight, and a couple of days later play Stanford. So you could knock off a couple of opponents a one-time trip, and it would ease a little bit of the pain. And I'm sure that's something that they would look at coming east as well. But I'm not sure there's any ideal situation for the student athlete, and I think they're the people that get overlooked in this entire picture. There are probably ways around it. I know that the conferences are looking into those situations and sharing airplanes and things to where they might not have to fly commercially. There might be ways to cut down on the travel time or play at some neutral sites and things like that. But excuse me. But I think it does put a strain on the student athlete, and they're the ones that get overlooked in this entire picture. and that's a shame because they're the ones that are doing all the work and getting not getting a lot out of it except a great college experience and a potential for stardom in their sport professionally if they're good enough.
Kimberly watching in Athens, Georgia. She says, we have you guys on the big screen at our home right now. Wahoo Wah, from a UVA graduate from the class of 2007. 8 states now on the Jerry and Jerry Show. Viewers and listeners, offer your perspective live in the feed, and we will relay your thoughts, your questions on air on this program. It's a truly dynamic show. Twitter, jump in the mix. If you have anything you want to share, we're happy to relay it on air as well, Twitter. This is a good one that's come in. What does, boys, what do you guys think is the future of media rights? The Pac-10, the Pac-12, or as Hootie called it, the Pac-4, was deep in negotiations with a streaming service through Apple, and that led to a number of the schools getting scared because it was not considered traditional media. Does Hootie or Jerry, do you think that the future of media rights is on a box, or is it streaming through services like Apple, Amazon, Hulu, Sling, or more? That's a hell of a question.
That's a great question, and I wish I was more well-schooled in those things. I actually subscribe to a streaming service for my television.
Which one do you subscribe to?
It's one out of South Carolina, and I don't know if it has a name, but I get like 4,000 channels. I get every sports network that's imaginable.
What do you pay for that one? Is it pretty affordable?
Not much. It's very affordable.
Yeah.
It's like I feel like a thief. Really, it's so cheap. I don't know that it's accessible to everybody, but
you got the hookup, don't you?
I was lucky. I got hooked up. There's got to be a strong future in that because there's so many of those services now. You rattled off a bunch of them. I think that is a direction that's being explored and a direction we're going in because, I mean, ESPN is bleeding money right now. They're losing subscribers. They've laid off tons of people.
They're all their stars, all their on-air talent.
Yeah, I mean, look at all the great names and people that we've come to welcome into our living rooms over the last 20 years that are no longer part of ESPN. I never thought that would happen.
They signed Pat McAfee to this ridiculous deal, and then a handful of weeks later, a lot of their on-air talent gets pink slipped.
Yeah, and they're having to keep, for some games, they're having to keep do the games remotely. In terms of, I've talked to a bunch of the guys who are sitting in their living rooms calling the games like you and I would do if we were watching the game. They have a few more camera angles maybe than we do, but or a producer in their ear, but they're not seeing much more than we are, I don't think. I know one of my friends was approached recently about doing some games for ESPN this year, and the salary they threw at him was laughable. He turned them down. He said, I'd rather not even work at all. So I think that's something it's going to grow in the future. Apple, I know, is making some strong inroads, and it's going to be interesting to follow that. I mean, look at everything else that's going on. Newspapers are dying or dead. Shows like this are becoming prominent in America and going to become more prominent,
100%,
I believe.
100%.
Guys like myself who used to be in the newspaper business are doing businesses on our own now. We're getting more readership than newspapers are. We can hit news instantaneously.
Exactly.
Beat TV, beat newspapers, beat radio, beat everything.
I mean, you talk radio, and you and I both have a background in talk radio on the radio dial on AM stations.
Right.
Now you think talk radio, folks are streaming our show literally on 11 states through Bluetooth in their car, as opposed to listening to AM radio in their car where the frequency can be going in and out. And to your credit and to your point, the instantaneous nature of utilizing social media to break news and get the news out is not only the future, it's the present, because these things, and for folks that are not watching me right now,
Exactly.
I have an iPhone in my hand. This has turned into almost like a drug addiction. I don't know about you, but I check this thing like 20. How much are you on Twitter every day?
Constantly.
Constantly, right? Me too.
And we break a lot of news on Twitter, as do many people in my business. And it's amazing. And in terms of advertising, a lot of people who advertise in radio, and if you go to a radio station and say how many people are listening to my commercial on your show, or how many people are listening to your show,
right?
They can't tell you.
They can't tell you.
But if you ask me how many people are seeing my ad or how many people are reading my stuff, or
we have analytics.
Our stuff, we have analytics.
Yeah.
I can tell you exactly. I can tell you if you're watching it on your phone or on your laptop or on your tablet, what state you're in, what country you're in. My website gets hits from all over the world every day. So it's. I think that's where we are now. I think these streaming services are going to be a player in the future. It's not just going to be ESPN and Fox. It's going to be Apple and Amazon and more people. I think that's the world we're in now, and it's only going to get more interesting in that aspect. Spencer
Godine, for example, is giving you props on LinkedIn. Spencer, thank you for watching. He is watching the show right now. He's a University of Virginia graduate. It looks like he works for Oracle right now, and he is watching the program in Texas. Austin, Texas right now.
Love Austin, Texas.
Love Austin, Texas. Absolutely. Viewers and listeners, leave your comments or questions in the feed like we're relaying them live on air. We're happy to give you props and acknowledge the viewers and listeners of the talk show. So what do we think, Cootie? I mean, do we think that here's what a handful of the folks are putting on Spotify. I'm seeing this on YouTube. I'm seeing this on Facebook. That the power eventually is just going to be consolidated into a couple of super conferences, and then the super conferences are just going to have divisions, and those divisions will try to prioritize historic rivalries. Do we see it playing out that way?
A lot of people think that's the end game, that eventually there will be two super conferences, that the Big Ten and the SEC will swallow everybody else. And at that point, it may come to that, to where there's one super conference with 60 or 100, we don't know how many teams that will participate. And believe it or not, they'll break into geographical divisions, which is what we had to begin with. And they'll play, they could restore the old rivalries that we used to see, like Nebraska, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, stuff like that we don't see much anymore. Nebraska, Oklahoma, because a lot of those rivalries are dead now, and that's a shame, because I know we all grew up on that. And if something like this doesn't happen, we may never see those again, and maybe special circumstances. But
do we have to worry about a rivalry like Virginia and Virginia Tech? Or a rivalry like UVA and UNC? UVA UNC is the South's oldest rivalry here.
We could, because, I don't know about Carolina and Virginia, because they seem to be in lockstep. If the ACC does break up, a lot of people believe that North Carolina and Virginia will be gobbled up by the Big Ten because of the academic fit that doesn't fit the SEC. That's where the Virginia Tech thing could split, and they wouldn't play each other anymore, because they'd be in different conferences, and they might not play each other anymore, because if you've got conferences, the Big Ten is now at 18 teams, the SEC is 16, the Big 12 at 16, the ACC, if they bring in Cal and Stanford, would be at 16. There may be a move to play more conference games, because the ACC's already playing 9. They could end up playing 10. All these conferences could end up playing 10 conference games, or even more. And if they do that, you're going to be very careful with those who you play non-conference. So you could play your rival, but you may not. You may not want to do that. You may want to play a couple of
Cupcakes.
Weaker teams.
Yeah.
Cupcakes.
Yeah.
Rent-a-victims, as I like to call them.
Right.
Because
I mean, a perfect
you
example
need
of
wins.
this, exactly. A perfect example of this is you got Tony Elliott in his second season at the University of Virginia, a man and a coach who I still have a lot of hope for. Entering his second year, he's got a new quarterback. He doesn't return a single starter on the offensive line. He's still trying to integrate or assimilate his recruits into the program. And this guy is opening up the season with Tennessee. And then he's got a really difficult JMU team. And then he's got Maryland. I mean, we got the start of this season, Tennessee, JMU, Maryland is extremely difficult for a Wahoo football team that is searching for a brand identity, Hootie.
And don't forget NC State coming to town for the fourth game, bringing back Brennan Armstrong and Robert Anai, the former offensive coordinator who made Brennan Armstrong
who he is,
what he was.
Yeah.
I think scheduling Tennessee it's like essentially they were selling a home game to go to Tennessee and make money. They're going to get a good payday out of that. I don't think that was a really great move on their part. I know they need money for their athletic program, but opening it up against Tennessee and Nashville, Tennessee's could be fighting for an SEC championship.
We're looking at a top 10 football team here.
They have a quarterback who's I wrote in my column today that one of the guys who observed him in the Manning quarterback camp, he's the strongest arm he's ever seen in pro or college. So, and he's just a freshman. So, Tennessee's loaded. I mean, you just hope to go out there and not get blown out. Then you come back against JMU, and it's going to be their Super Bowl. They're going to come across the mountain with a fury, and they're going to want to show that they're the number one program in the state of Virginia. It means everything to them. I don't know if Virginia quite understands that or not because they haven't played JMU in 40 years. Then you go to Maryland on a Friday night, a Big Ten opponent, and even though Maryland is not a great football program, they are further advanced down the road than Virginia is at this time. And then you got NC State. You could get off to a disastrous start, and I don't think if you're trying to rebuild a program that you should play a tough schedule. I think you should go the route that Duke and Wake Forest did for years and are still doing to some degree in playing cupcakes. You win, you build some momentum, you get some confidence, you get into bowl games, even if they're crappy bowl games. It's okay to play crap State University as a non-conference game. And, you gotta. I think that's the intelligent way to build a program. Then once you are up there, then you can take on the world's best. But I don't think it's good to do that when you're trying to rebuild because when you get down in Division I football or FBS football and Power 5 football, it's a tough climb back up that ladder, man, because nobody's showing you any mercy. So I think they've gone about it in the wrong way. I hope that they look at that for future schedules in trying to get this program back on its feet again. I wish Tony Elliott all the success in the world.
Me too.
I really like him. He's a good guy. I like his coaches. They have some really great, engaging athletes over there. I've talked to a bunch of them in training camp so far. I would love to see them do well, but it's such an uphill climb right now, Jerry. Everything's stacked against Virginia right now, and it's a tough road, man.
Questions coming in fast and furious. David Puso watching the program right now. Tim Carson, the realtor, watching the program. Lonnie Murray watching the program. James Watson, Bob Yarborough, Carly Wagner, hello. Thank you kindly for joining us. Jamie Turner, Heather Walker, hello and welcome to the show. Kelly Jackson, Brittany Gray, Tom Stargell, Dave Warwick. We're talking sports with Jerry Hootie Ratcliffe on the Jerry and Jerry Show here. Let's keep the comments coming. I love what's happening here. Petey, thank you, Petey Lytle. Petey Lytle giving us some props right now. He says Noah Josie is a returning starter on the offensive line, FYI. And he says the offensive line should be much improved. He hopes. We certainly hope that on this program.
Yes.
We have a quarterback that is untested now under center. We've heard positive things from training camp, but let's cut to the chase. He's never played in the Atlantic Coast Conference. He's never opened with Tennessee. He's never played in front of what we hope is 50, 60,000 at Scott Stadium. I think the reality is if we hit 30,000 at Scott Stadium, that may be a success this year. What do we expect with this Virginia football team, at least in training camp, and how can the program potentially mature or improve as the season goes on? You and I were talking off air in our pre-production meeting that if we put the over-under at 3.5 wins for the 2023 season for this Virginia football team, that the large majority of the fan base would take the under on 3.5 wins. Your colleagues in the ACC picked this team to finish dead last in the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Right. Well, Vegas is the one who put that 3.5 over-under on the season, and most people are taking the under. If you look at the schedule, it's a challenging schedule. They're not going to be favored. I mean, if you take the 3.5 over, that means they've got to win 4 games, and it's hard to find 4 opponents on that schedule that they're going to be favored to beat. If you look at it, and I appreciate the question. Noah Josie's a great kid. I had him on my radio show back when I used to do one for WINA, and he's a really good guy. A lot of people think that offensive linemen are the Dumbos of the football teams. It's actually the opposite. They're the smartest guys on the football team, and usually the most interesting guys to interview. But some of these guys, even though they don't have a lot of starting experience on this offensive line, have been in the program now, have had another year to build their bodies and their strength. I know that their new offensive line coach, Terry Heffernan, who came here from Stanford and has worked in the NFL and in various college programs, has worked really hard on fundamentals and is trying to build some chemistry with that offensive line. And it's going to have to be good if this team is going to succeed, because last year, Jerry, these guys only scored 17 points a game. In modern football, that is nothing. We're talking Xbox numbers is what you have to put up on the board. You have to score 30 points a game now just to be able to be in the game in the fourth quarter in most contests. Sometimes that's not good enough. We saw Virginia against BYU when the game was you could score 50 and
still lose.
And would still lose.
Yeah.
BYU put up 700 and some offensive yards against Virginia that night. But they're going to have to be pretty darn good on the offensive line, because they're going to have to protect Tony Muskett. I like him. I like his confidence. He has a lot of starting experience, but it's not Power 5 football starting experience. He's played in front of really small crowds.
You're right.
Not much bigger than high school crowds.
Right.
He's going to be walking into a stadium of 60,000 people that want his head.
I mean, his first game is at Tennessee.
Yeah.
It's bananas.
Yeah, and the
Did they just anticipate?
The Titan Stadium out there in Nashville
is massive. Did they anticipate all along that Jay Woolfolk was going to be the starter under center this year?
No.
Okay, so that was not the expectation. Now, I don't think either. I don't want to speak for you. I don't think either you or I have any beef with the decision that Jay chose to focus on baseball.
Oh, not at all.
I mean, he's got a major league arm, and he's got an offensive line that's unproven right now. And the last thing that we all want, Wahoo Nation, was an injury to Jay's arm and potentially limiting the tens of millions of dollars that's on the horizon with Major League Baseball.
Yeah, one sack on that shoulder and his career is done. I think he came to that realization when he was with USA
Baseball.
Yeah. And made that decision. I think up until then, I think he was thinking about coming back. A lot of people, including myself, have criticized Tony Elliott a little bit for not anticipating that possibility and finding yet another quarterback.
I read your column about that.
And because if Tony Muskett gets hurt, Jerry, and Tennessee is going to test him.
Bring the house.
They're going to bring the house and see what he's made of, see if he can read blitzes and stunts like he's never seen before. against an offensive line that's unproven. Might have a lot of potential, but it still has to prove itself. If he gets beaten up in that first game, we're looking at a backup who
was playing high school football 6 months ago, 10 months ago?
Yeah. He's never taken a college snap, and nor has anybody behind him in the system. That's mighty dangerous. That's walking on incredibly thin ice in Power 5 football. So they better keep Tony Muskett upright and clean. And I've talked to some of the linemen, and they take that very seriously. I talked to a bunch of the guys about that in the past week or so. But it's with no Jay Woolfolk back there, and even Jay had limited experience at quarterback. He has been in the system, but he didn't play much last year. It could be disastrous if he gets hurt in that first game against Tennessee. And yeah, we're talking about the big boys, SEC football. They're out for blood. I mean, they want to put you on your back every play. And not that other teams don't, but the SEC brings a special kind of talent that a lot of schools just don't have those kind of players on their roster. And again, their coordinators are going to test Tony Muskett from the opening snap to see what he's all about, to see if he can handle it. And I hope he can. I hope he gets through the game and with flying colors. But I'm just saying, if there's a risk there, if he gets hurt, this program could be in dire straits.
Sparkle Clark giving you props on Twitter. She follows you on your Twitter account. You got 9 states on the program right now. Vanessa Parkhill in Earlysville, Virginia says, my Nittany Lions lost our in-state rivalry when we went into the Big Ten. So sad.
Yeah.
Pitt versus Penn State was always the last game of the season, like UVA versus Virginia Tech. Rivalry weekend means little to alums like me now. I respect that comment right there from Vanessa Parkhill, who we've dubbed the Queen of Earlysville. Chuck Ramey says, this is a fantastic show, absolutely very informative. Petey is watching in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, literally as we watch the show and host the show right now. Questions are coming in faster than I can keep up. Alex Erpy, hello. He is the co-star of Today y Mañana on this network, which airs Thursdays at 10:15 a.m. He says this, so a question perhaps of ignorance here for you two boys. When was this schedule adopted, agreed upon? Was there an assumption at the tail end of the Mendenhall years that we would see continued improvement or an overreaction to hiring Tony Elliott last year and assuming instant success for the team? Not sure how long in advance such schedules are decided upon.
Well, most of these schedules are decided years in advance,
right?
Unfortunately. And that's a lot of these future schedules are going to be torn up now because of all the realignment and potentially in the ACC and Virginia as well. The Tennessee game, however, was added in the offseason. Virginia was supposed to play, I can't remember who it was now, but I think Tennessee was opening up with BYU, and BYU, because of their conference realignment, they've joined the Big 12. They opted out of that game. So Tennessee was looking for an opponent, and Virginia did not have to take that game. They could have probably found somebody of lesser quality to maybe open up with, a softer opening to maybe give these guys some experience, a win, some confidence. But he is right that most of these schedules are done up in advance. And you know, when some of these games were added, Virginia was probably playing well. When Bronco took Virginia to back-to-back bowl games, they beat South Carolina and then gave Florida a heck of a game in the Orange Bowl in 2019. So some of these games were probably added then when he felt that he was going to be here for a long time, felt like the program was going to grow. So you have to give them some understanding for that. But I'm talking about future schedules. I would not have played Tennessee. I would have played the weakest team I could find out there. Somebody like New Mexico State or something, you know, somebody like that, another FCS team or something who's really bad, just to try to get some confidence in this opening game of the season instead of putting everything at risk against one of the better teams in the nation.
Do you buy this comment from Petey? Petey's watching in Philadelphia right now. He says, last year the Tennessee defense was ranked 91 in the nation. I'm not worried about that side of the ball going into game one, week one against the Vols. Do you buy that? I don't know if I necessarily buy that, especially with an unproven offensive line and a quarterback that's never played Power 5 football.
Well, all of Virginia's metrics offensively last year were in the 100s. There's 131 last year, 133 FBS teams in the country now. Virginia was ranked 100 to 126 in most of those. And in terms of offensive production returning, Virginia ranks 126th in the nation out of 133 teams. Most of the guys that did produce the 17 points a game last year are gone. Even if you're going up against a defense that's not very good, you've got to do better than that. If you go out and score 17 points against Tennessee in this game, you may give up 50. Even though Virginia has a really good defense, and was surprisingly good last year. And John Rudzinski, I'll give him props. He really impressed me last year with what he did with Virginia's defense as its new coordinator. And he's got 8 starters returning, even though they did lose their 2 best players who transferred out. But still, you're going to be going up against a dynamic offense in a hostile environment, and it's going to be something that these Virginia players are not accustomed to. It's like walking into the Roman Coliseum. Yeah. Tennessee football, it's SEC football. It's a different world. Most ACC people can't relate to what Southern football is all about. It's more than football. It's a religion, and it's 365. There's 3 sports in the SEC. It's football recruiting, and spring football. It's nothing else. And so they live and die football, and it's just going to be an incredibly hostile environment out there. And I know people in the stands don't beat you, but they can rattle you. And I don't care if Tennessee's defense was ranked 91 in the country last year. They won't be 91 this year. They'll be better than that, I guarantee you, because they have designs on trying to win the SEC, at least their division.
Right now, Tennessee, ladies and gentlemen, 10th in the preseason coaches poll. 10th. Yes. We're looking at a top 10 preseason team here in week 1. This one's coming from Orlando, Florida. Robert in Orlando. Fellas, I'm a Wahoo graduate from 1987. I know he's only in his 2nd season, but is Tony Elliott on the hot seat? A little early for that, right?
A little early for that. I think the jury is still out. I know the general consensus is you've got to give a coach 4 years to recruit to his system. I know that Tony has a completely different training camp this year than he did last year. Last year they were going to class and going to camp at the same time. I don't think they're doing that as much this year. He's able to practice not at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning. He's practicing in the afternoons. He has them for longer periods of time for studying the system. A lot of these guys have been in the system for 2 years now, or going on their 2nd year. A lot of these guys are understanding it. They have flushed Broncos system, and I think things are just more comfortable, more cohesive than in the past. Who knows what the future holds? They could have a disastrous season again this year. It wouldn't be surprising to most, like you said.
2 wins, 3 wins.
They've been picked at the bottom of the league by just about everybody. ESPN's analytics rated them a 1% chance of winning the ACC this year, or even being in the championship game. I have noticed a little uptick in the recruiting of late. The last 3 or 4 of the last 5 recruits they've gotten have been recruited by really successful programs that Virginia isn't even on par with at the moment. So if he can continue to bring in talent, he could possibly turn this thing around, but it won't be easy. It's all about recruiting, guys. It's not about the coaching. It's about getting good players in here. Bear Bryant, the first college football coach's first interview of my sports writing career, once told me, and I got to know Bear Bryant a little bit back in the day. He once told me he says, son, if you don't know anything else, no recruiting. Because have you ever seen a jackass win the Kentucky Derby? So I think that tells you all you need to know about football. As Bill Dooley used to say, football is the lifeblood of any football program. And he was right. If you don't have players, I don't care how well you can coach. It's all for naught. Coaching can make a difference, but you've got to have the players to coach.
I'll give you the schedule here. Viewers and listeners will rattle off the schedule here. 11 states on the program right now. Ask questions, share the show, like the show. We'll relay your questions and comments live on air on any social platform you're watching upon. Here's the football schedule. You tell me win or loss here. I want to see how we get. Okay, Tennessee we've covered.
You're killing me here.
I know, right? Tennessee we've covered.
I'll say if they're going to be favored or not.
Okay.
How's that?
Okay. Well, how about we say Tennessee? We know it's a loss.
That's
what are you
a
predicting?
loss.
4 touchdown deficit right there.
Spread is 28.
Yeah, that's why I have 4 touchdowns right there. I see Tennessee covering 28 at home with the statement to make.
I would say that's probably so.
Yeah,
they may be lucky to keep it to 28.
Right. Exactly. And I think that line's going to move. James Madison, you've already hit on this. The Dukes look at this matchup against UVA, against Virginia Tech, against Liberty, any of the in-state schools, as like a conference championship, like a Commonwealth championship here. And I was putting on social media last year, and I follow your stuff constantly, that maybe the best football team in the Commonwealth is JMU. Do you see a loss or a win against the Dukes in week 2?
I think this game is a toss-up.
Okay.
Just because it's in Charlottesville. And I think Virginia knows that it has to win this game. This is a must-win for Virginia. If they lose this game, things could unravel in a hurry. But you can't take JMU for granted. They beat some really good football programs last year, and I don't know who the odds makers are going to favor in this game. I think it's a toss-up.
Okay, toss-up right there. You get 3 points for playing at home. So maybe it's Virginia -3. Maybe Virginia a touchdown favorite, maybe at home. You're saying it's
probably
even line.
Probably a field goal.
Okay, field goal.
If that much.
Maryland and College Park. I think I know the answer to this one here.
Maryland will be favored.
Maryland, NC State, Brennan Armstrong, Robert Anine coming back to their old stopping grounds with a potential chip on their shoulder.
A huge chip on their shoulder. Robert and I was one of the most unhappy people in America when Bronco announced his resignation. He screamed at Bronco Mendenhall in their meeting. He was so upset about Bronco resigning and leaving the coaches scattered to the wind. He's going to come back in here with a fury, and Brennan Armstrong is going to do the same thing.
Huge chip on his shoulder with Brennan Armstrong.
NC State will win that game.
I got to ask you a Brennan Armstrong follow-up. This season, paramount for Brennan Armstrong. He goes from under the Bronco Mendenhall era, maybe a second-day pick, to in the Tony Elliott era, not on anyone's draft board here. How does Brennan Armstrong recalibrate or remodel his draft stock?
Well, there's two streams of thought on that. One is that I don't think Brennan Armstrong was going to be a pick.
Okay.
I think he would have been an undrafted free agent. He sent out a feeler to the NFL after that year, and there were no takers.
Okay.
Just like last year.
Yeah.
He shopped himself out to the Big 10, the Big 12, and the SEC through the transfer portal.
No one wanted
There
him.
there were no takers.
Right.
Where did he go?
ACC.
Back.
Followed as offensive coordinator.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some people believe he was a product of that system and can't adapt to another system. So he may have an incredible year this year, but I don't know that spells out that he's going to play in the NFL.
Do you think he's a product of the system?
I do.
Yeah.
And I say that because last year, and I know he was frustrated with the change in systems, and I know they tried to simplify it perhaps a little too late. Tony Elliott even said that they assumed too much in introducing a new system to these guys that just never clicked. But still, we saw Brendan Armstrong miss wide open receivers with no pressure on him last year, time and time again. He threw 2 pick sixes within 15 seconds of one another. I just don't see him making it in the NFL. I may eat those words. I may be eating some crow on this show sometime next year, but I just don't think that he's an NFL quarterback.
Boston College, Chestnut Hill.
It's going to be interesting because BC is one of the teams that's picked down at the bottom with Virginia. I think that game is a winnable game. It is on the road, and that leaves a question mark. The pressure, that guy is on the hot seat. If they have another bad year, he's gone. Coach Hadley, I think his name. And I think they lost their quarterback to he went to another ACC program. I can't remember which one, maybe Pitt. But that's a chance for an upset win on the road. But I think BC will probably be a slight favorite in that game, just because Virginia could be coming off some losses.
You have another matchup to follow closely, an in-state rivalry. I think I can use that term. An out-of-state rivalry, the South's oldest rivalry, William & Mary, and then North Carolina, followed by the University of Miami. William & Mary, UNC, Miami. What do you make of those three?
Virginia will be favored against William & Mary, even though William & Mary is picked to win their league, the CAA, and are coming off a playoff appearance last year. Mike London certainly would love to pull off an upset there, and he has a lot of former Wahoos on his coaching staff. But I think Virginia will be favored to win that game and should win that game if Tony Muskett remains upright at that point.
Comments are coming in so fast here. 12 states on the program. Hootie Ratcliffe. Let's go Hurricanes. Let's go Tar Heels. Tar Heels on October 21st. The Hurricanes in Miami, South Florida on the 28th of October. Before we get to November and the final 4 games of the season, what do you make of UNC and the Miami Hurricanes, Hootie?
Virginia will definitely be favored to lose to Mac Brown and Carolina. They have aspirations of finishing in the, I would say the top 2, but they do have a Heisman-type quarterback in Drake May, and if he has a great year, who knows? Their weakness has been their defense in recent years. If they can shore up their defense, they could be in the mix for a decent bowl game. So they will definitely be favored to win that game. Carolina.
Multiple people are saying, you'll appreciate this, multiple people are saying on the feed, I'm seeing this on Facebook, on Spotify, on YouTube, and on Twitter, is it time for men's basketball and Tony Bennett to get kicking and going? We'll get to the Wahoo basketball team to close the program. Before we do, how about the Miami Hurricanes right around Halloween?
That's going to be an interesting game because Miami has been known to underachieve greatly in past years. Virginia usually gives them a strong game, no matter where the game's played. Last year, Virginia couldn't score against them. They had so many ample opportunities to beat Miami and couldn't do it. They just couldn't score. I think if there's an upset brewing somewhere on that schedule, I think that would be it. At that point, if Miami is having not the year that people expect them to have, there's been a tendency for Miami players to throw in the towel. I'm not sure their quarterback is as good as advertised. Mario Cristobal is the coach. He talks a good game, but so far he hasn't produced down there. I think if Virginia is going to pull an upset this year, I think that's the game. But they will be favored to lose that game.
You got a November slate. That's Georgia Tech, Louisville, Duke, and of course the Virginia Tech Hokies at Scott Stadium in Charlottesville. Last game of the season. What jumps out at you? Georgia Tech in Charlottesville, Louisville at Louisville, Duke at home, and Virginia Tech to close the season.
Virginia may be favored to beat Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is a new head coach. He was an interim last year. He took over halfway through the season when they fired their coach during the season. They're scrambling down there as well, and Virginia has dominated Georgia Tech here. There's a curse on Georgia Tech in Scott Stadium, and has been ever since they knocked off number one Virginia in 1990 on that fateful night that we all would like to erase from memory. It was probably the best college football game I've ever covered in my life.
Wow.
In fact, Furman Bisher, who wrote until he was 90 years old for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and was truly an institution in sports writing, said that was the best college football game he had ever covered, had ever seen. So I feel like he was exactly right about that. I think Virginia might pull off that win. I think that's one of the games that in that 3.5 that they'll be favored to win. After that, I'm not sure. I think they're slim pickings. Louisville has a new head coach. Jeff Brom comes in from Purdue. Jeff Brom would probably have been Virginia's head coach had Bronco Mendenhall turned it down. I know he had been here for an interview, was scheduled to come back for a second interview, but Bronco took the job, and Jeff Brom ended up leaving Western Kentucky for Purdue. He struggled a little bit out there, but is coming home to Louisville. Played quarterback at Louisville, if I'm not mistaken. That's going to be an interesting game, but it is at Louisville, and Virginia's struggled to win out there. Virginia will be favored to lose that game.
Duke and Virginia Tech.
Duke is interesting. That coach came in. He was a finalist for the Virginia job with Tony Elliott. He went into Duke last year and won 9-10 games. Incredible coach, ACC Coach of the Year, with talent that was. People were questioning whether they had that much talent, and he did an incredible job. It's at Duke, I believe.
Here in Charlottesville.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That game is in Charlottesville. Duke will be favored to win, but depending on where Virginia stands at that point of the season, they could give them a game, just because I think it's Duke, and Virginia still thinks that even though Duke beat them soundly last year, I think Virginia still thinks they can play with Duke.
Virginia Tech to close the season. Here's a comment from Vanessa. She said, I heard an interview with the Virginia Tech head football coach where he talked about his predecessor's lack of recruiting in the 757 and how he plans to attack the 757 and recruit the Commonwealth very hard. Who wins the in-state recruiting battle, UVA or Virginia Tech? And then I'll add to that comment by saying, what do you make of this matchup?
Virginia Tech is winning that battle right now. Neither school is doing a great job in the state of Virginia at this point. And because Penn State is coming in and taking players, Maryland is coming in. Maryland is a new rival for recruiting in the state because they've picked up some steam. North Carolina hasn't done as well this year. They lost Mac Brown got rid of Dre Bly, who had taken a lot of good recruits from the Tidewater area into Chapel Hill, and Virginia and North Carolina lost out on those. Right now, it's a struggle for Tech and Virginia to convince kids to stay home because neither program has produced in the last several years. So right now, Tech is winning that battle. It's still got a ways to go. I'm not sure the talent in the state is quite as good this year and as deep as it has been in recent years. But that's to be determined. But right now, I think Tech has the upper hand in recruiting. And Virginia seems to be going the route that Bronco Mendenhall did. Broncos recruiting in the state of Virginia was disastrous. They didn't do a very good job, but they did a great job outside the state, where Virginia still has a good reputation as a program and a school. So I don't think in today's modern football you necessarily have to own your state to be successful. Clemson doesn't recruit that much out of South Carolina. They go to other states. A lot of schools do that now. And Virginia is getting a lot of good recruits out of Georgia, believe it or not. And so I don't think you necessarily have to win your state to be good, but you do have to get your share. And I think that's where Virginia has come up short, and they need to correct that. In terms of the season, this season's game, you know Tech's going to be favored. I don't care what the circumstance is at the end. Tech has ruled the rivalry. This game is in Charlottesville, which should help them. There's some games that Virginia should have won in this series in the last 8 years or so, and just couldn't pull it off. Couldn't get the job done. Tech, got to give credit to Tech for coming back and winning a couple of those games they shouldn't have won. Virginia has to stop the bleeding there at some point. The game is here. It depends on, I don't know what kind of year Tech's going to have. They're not predicted to do very well either. So I think Tech will be favored to win that game, and probably will, just because I've covered both programs during my career, and for some reason, and I don't know what it is, that game seems to mean more to Tech players than it does to Virginia players. I know some of that was Bud Foster when he was there. He would get his team incredibly psyched for that game. I'm still not sure why Virginia players sometimes didn't get up as much for that game. It might be partly because a lot of the guys aren't from Virginia and don't understand the rivalry until they're faced with it. Didn't used to be that way when Virginia did rule the state in recruiting and had great players, and that game meant everything to them, and Virginia did great in the rivalry. But I've noticed in the last 20 years or so, the game seems to mean more to Tech than it does to Virginia. Explain that to me. I don't quite understand it.
Jerry Ratcliffe dropping facts and knowledge right here on the program. Bill Smith says Hootie is the absolute best. And he says, I'm catfish, by the way. Bill Smith watching the show.
My golfing partner.
Richmond Times-Dispatch is watching us right now on the program. Welcome the Times-Dispatch newsroom to the show. I see a lot of folks in the Roanoke Valley, the New River Valley watching the program, as well as a lot of folks in southwestern Virginia watching the show. The local TV station right down the street is on the feed right now watching Hootie and I on this program. Many folks are saying, is it basketball season already? It's 11:34. Hootie and I have gone in an hour and 20 minutes almost without taking a commercial break or stopping. We bleed ACC sports. We know it. We love it. We follow it. Men's basketball, Tony Bennett. Let's close on a positive note here. What do we make of this team? What do we make of early conversations you've had from Tony Bennett's bunch?
I was asked that question, is it basketball season yet, a month ago, Jerry. So some people are late to that party. I think this basketball team has the potential to be better than last year's team. I know last year's team won the ACC regular season. I don't know if this team will duplicate that or not, but I think this team has a chance to be more successful in the postseason than last year's. I think this team is a little deeper and has more scoring threats than last year's team. There were times last year, Jerry, especially down the stretch, when this team struggled to score. Some of the guys just lost their rhythm or lost their shots or something, or were defended better, or what game planned against better. I think it's going to be harder to do that against this team. I think Isaac McNeely is going to be.
He's put on weight, muscle.
He has. He's a stud, and I think he's going to be better. I think he's going to be. He's going to be hunt shots more than he did in the past. think he's going to be more aggressive. They've recruited some other guys that can shoot the eyes out of it. Rhodey was led all freshman in the nation in scoring last year. He's a dead eye. The kid from Oklahoma they brought in can shoot it. They've got some guys who can light it up, and I just think there's just they've done a good job in replacing the talent that they had with, in some cases, better players, I believe. And it seems to me they're practicing against each other now, and they're building. The one question I had is, can this team build chemistry? And after talking to my son Scott, has done some interviews with some of the new players, and we've talked to some of the older players as well, and I think that chemistry is being built as we speak. They're working hard, and I just think it's going to be a very exciting season for Virginia basketball fans. And Tony Bennett, it's amazing, Jerry. He, after the transfer portal hit this past spring, he was down to 4 players in the program. And Reese Beekman, of course, was out there. We weren't sure where he was going to go, if he was going to go to the NBA or not. And one of the biggest things that's happened to this program is Reese Beekman returning.
Absolutely.
He's going to be one of the premier players in the nation this year. And it's his team. And I think he's going to take this very seriously and try to put this team back into the limelight again. But you got to give Tony Bennett and his staff incredible credit for going out in the transfer portal and finding players that fit his system. And he has a unique way of recruiting. We'll talk about that deeper
as we get closer
in future shows. But I've got some very interesting stories to tell about Tony Bennett and how he approaches players and how he convinces them. And I'm not sure he does it on purpose. I think it's just who he is and part of what comes up in conversation that convinces these players. And it's nothing, it's subtle things that a lot of people wouldn't even think matters, but it matters everything in the world to these kids. And I think that's what makes him who he is and why he's so successful and why people want to play for him.
Jerry Ratcliffe on fire today. This is the Jerry and Jerry Show. We went literally almost 90 minutes of talking UVA and ACC sports, and this is what you can expect. Long-form content highlighting the programs that matter to you, and we relay the content on your phones and across social media devices that are in our hands 24/7, 365. We're excited for all sports. All what we want from this program is for you to appreciate the content. We want success for all UVA teams, because when the Virginia sports teams, the UVA sports teams, the ACC sports teams are doing well, the engagement is at higher levels. And when the engagement is at higher levels, we all win from that. Hootie Ratcliffe, this was an absolute joy sitting across from you for 90 minutes.
Had a blast, man.
It flew by.
Fun.
Right?
What?
It flew by the time.
It flew by, yeah. 90, never faster 90 minutes of my life, I don't think.
I truly enjoyed it as well. The show is archived on all social media platforms. We will package the show and send it to the fabulous Scott Ratcliffe as well, so you can get this content on jerryratcliffe.com. We'll get this content up on ilovecville.com as 2 very established brands partner together to highlight ACC sports and UVA sports for your enjoyment. We would be remiss not to highlight the man behind the scenes, Judah Wickhauer. Hootie and I have the easy job. We get to sit in front of the cameras and the microphones and talk about topics that we love to do. Judah Wickhauer has the challenging job, especially on the first show.
Yes.
When we were scrambling to get everything ready to rock and roll. So Judah, we salute you. We applaud you. Thank you kindly. And the show is now Tuesdays at 10:15 a.m. And we'll look to expand upon that as we build our partner roster. And any businesses out there that want to partner with the Jerry and Jerry Show, please reach out to either one of us. We're excited to partner with you on this program and on this network. Thank you kindly for joining us.
Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you.
We appreciate you so much. So long, everybody. Take care.